to the So I'm Adopted podcast, where we talk everything adoption. This journey is not one we take alone. Together we grapple with raw emotions that surface from adoption stories. We want you to be comfortable enough to heal. So sit back and go with us on this journey as we dive deep into adoption. Welcome to another episode of So I'm Adopted. I'm John.
And I'm Lisa.
And we are
Adopted.
Again, and we are excited that you are joining us for another episode where we just have some general conversations about non-traditional relationships. And just we've come to this understanding that there's no cookie cutter perfect situation. Mm-hmm. Even the families that, and I put in quotation marks because you have those families that are allegedly like the perfect model, even they have secrets.
Yes.
And what we want to do is just have a safe place to discuss that and chip away at the nuances that people feel like, oh, it's just me, I'm on that island. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's been a minute since we've been together. So how have you been?
Good. I can't complain. Okay. Working. Came back from Portugal not that long ago. Nice little R&R time. Had a great time. Other than that, nothing. Just trying to prepare for our summer. What about you?
So for me, relevant to our podcast, this Mother's Day that just passed, and happy belated Mother's Day.
Thank you.
Was a different one for me, and let me tell you why. Normally, I would do a post for my mom and Janice's mom. Right. So this year, it was on my heart, and I reached out to my first mom, and I said, I want to give you your flowers. Are you okay with me blasting it on social media? Because she's always said, y'all blast everything out there. And I
we do.
And I asked her, and she said, baby, we family. She said, you got 4 benefits now. And I just got so like choked up and excited, and it just was humble. So when I put the post up about her, the feedback that I got was just so amazing. Because people still don't know the whole story. I was talking to one of my line brothers, and he didn't know that was the first time that I met her was at my dad's funeral.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So a lot of people still don't know the whole story.
Yeah.
But that, for me, and it's relevant to, the podcast and just that growth journey.
Yeah.
And our goal is that if we can empower somebody else to be willing to share their story, then we've done our job. And we've had lots of those like experiences or outcomes that people have just said, thank y'all for doing what y'all do.
Yeah. And that's why we're going to keep doing it.
Absolutely. And today we have and it's always great when people that view the podcast that we don't know reach out. And that's our scenario today.
Yes.
You got an email and we read it, and then we met with her. And when she started to share the story, it was like, whoa, stop. Because there was so many questions that I had, but I wanted the interview to be organic.
Yes.
And she has a different angle from the adoption.
Yeah, we've never gone
story.
This way before.
Yeah, this is a totally different way. So I'm excited about today. So let's jump in. Let's go.
All right, let's dig in. So let me just read her bio so we'll know who we are talking about today. And her name is Lauren Stevens. She is a widely published essayist. I hope I said that right, and fiction and nonfiction storyteller. Her work has appeared in Los Angeles Times, Chicago Tribune, MacGuffin, the Jewish Woman's Literary Annual, Forge, Crack the Spine, Amuse Broche, The Writer's Launch, Somerset Review, Montreal Literary Review, the Tablet Travel Magazine, to just name a few. She is a 2-time nominee of the Pushcart Prize in the book Paris Nights, My Year at the Moulin Rouge by Cliff Simon. Lauren Stevens was named one of the best titles from an independent press by Kirkus Reviews. She is president and founder of the ghostwriting companies Write Wisdom and Bright Star Memoirs. Prior to establishing her company, Lauren was a documentary filmmaker. Among her credits are Legacy of Hollywood, Blacklist, with on-camera narration by Burt Lancaster.
Well, I know that name. Ferdinand
Yes,
Castro.
he
Okay.
did the Ten Commandments.
Yes. Okay. That's a staple every year.
Yes. Produced for PBS and nominated for an Emmy Award. Sojourner Truth, Ain't I a Woman?
Ooh.
Produced for Coronet Films and recipient of the Golden Apple from National Education Association. And Los Padres, the Shepherd's Play, produced for the Latino Consortium of PBS, and the recipient of the Sin Gold Eagle and nominated for an Image Award. She is a national commissioner of the Anti-Defamation League and a member of its Deborah Awards Committee for Outstanding Women.
Ooh,
Please welcome to our little podcast.
Right.
Ms. Lauren Stevens. I'm going to go ahead and add her on in.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me as one of your guests today. I'm sort of embarrassed about how long that introduction was.
It's okay. Don't be embarrassed because I was trying to figure out how to, but all of it was important.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to miss any of it.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
I've been working as a writer for quite a few years. I think I started my ghostwriting company in 2005. And in about 2009, let's see, when was it? 6 years I worked on. The reason that I reached out to both of you because of your interest in adoption and having been adoptees is that I am married to someone who is adopted. And I learned the expression kindred adoption, where my husband was adopted by an aunt and uncle. He was born in Osaka, Japan, and because both his parents were sick, his father in particular had tuberculosis after the war, the Second World War, which was not that uncommon. He was not really able to work, and he decided in a moment of panic, I would say, that he would give up his own little boy so that he would have a better life in America. And as you may know, the United States was sort of looked upon as the land of golden opportunity. It turns out not to be the case many times, but, we've done a pretty good job of selling the story.
Right.
And I was so interested in my husband's background and what made his parents, and in particular his mother, give up this beautiful little boy. How could she have done that? And that was kind of the driving force that made me sit down in the chair and decide to write the book that I wrote called All Sorrows Can Be Borne. And I worked on it for almost 6 years, which, had I started it and known it was going to take that long, I don't know if I ever would have stuck with it. But once I was into it, it was such a many-faceted story that I just kept digging and digging and digging. And I went to Japan with his adoptive mother, who was living at the time in Utah, but my husband had grown up actually in Glendive, Montana, in eastern Montana. You can only imagine this little boy arriving in this new country, not speaking a word of English, and having to fit in. And especially his parents, his adoptive parents, sort of pushed him to be the all-American boy. They dressed him up in cowboy outfits and, the cowboy bedroom and all of that stuff. And I think back in the day that was very common. Today, happily, I think many parents who adopt children want them to retain their roots.
Right.
And that makes, I think, for a much easier transition. And it doesn't deny who you really are. So anyway, I worked on this book and went to Japan with his adoptive mother to meet with his birth mother. And we spent about 10 days together in Osaka, Japan. And I interviewed his birth mom. And the only way I could do it was to have his adoptive mother be there with me, because I spoke no Japanese. Mm-hmm. And his birth mother spoke no English. So you can just imagine what went on, the round robin as it was. And sometimes they would both get so excited or sad about something that they would speak only in Japanese. And I'm just sitting there saying, please wait, tell me what you're saying. Because I knew it was something important.
Right.
And the book was published in 2021 and then in paperback in 2023. And it has since earned some attention, I think, mainly because of the subject matter of adoption, the subject matter of immigration, which has become such a big point of conversation right now, and the subject of suicide, because his father killed himself after his parents sent him to the United States. He was so bereft of losing this little boy and what he had done and how it affected his wife, that he just couldn't stand to live any longer. Wow. It was just a very sad turn of events. So with that as a background, I'm going to introduce the man of the hour, Dana Miyoshi, my husband of 29 years. He has to remind me that it's 29 years. It seems a lot less because he's such a hard worker that I don't get to see him very much. But Dana, as I say, was born in Osaka, Japan, came to the United States as a 2.5-year-old. And it was only when he joined the Navy, he was sent back to Japan, and he finally was able to meet up again with his birth mother. I only met her at our wedding. You mentioned that you only met your father, I think it was, at the funeral or at someone's.
My mom, I hadn't met her before, and she came to my adopted father's funeral. First time that I met her.
I see. Well, in our case, I met his mother at our wedding, and you can only imagine. So with that kind of as a background, perhaps you want to ask Dana some questions, and I'll jump in or whatever you want. We're very loosey-goosey in this house.
No problem.
Do you want to start?
So, well, this is a prize. I wasn't expecting to actually have Dana on the podcast, so I have to recalibrate my brain just for a brief moment, because it was more so directing the questions to
you being a spouse.
You being the spouse.
Uh-huh.
Now that we have Dana himself.
Oh, this is great.
This is even better. Now, we still going to ask you questions too, Lauren, but we definitely and let's see. Let me see what.
So while you're doing that, we'll start, because normally this is one of the first questions that we ask.
True. Yes.
So Dana, at what point? And again, because our listeners haven't read the book, so they don't know the story, so they're meeting you all for the first time. So at what point did you know that you were adopted? Let's start there.
As far back as I can remember, I knew that I was adopted. Now, I flew on a plane by myself from Tokyo to San Francisco when I was 2.5 years old. I don't remember any of that. You'd think I would remember being on a plane all by myself, flying, all the way across the ocean. I don't remember any of that. And then my adopted parents, who were my aunt and uncle, picked me up in San Francisco, and we drove all the way to Montana. So I don't remember any of that drive, driving all that distance. But somewhere along the line, when I was living in Glendive, I knew that I had been adopted. I mean, they didn't try to keep it a secret at all. They told me the whole story about what happened, why I was adopted and everything. So I knew as far back as I can remember, I knew that I was adopted.
because there are a lot of people that don't find out until later in life. For me, I've always known that I was adopted. Lisa found out when she was much older, so it definitely has a different impact.
Mm-hmm.
For you, how do you think you knowing at such an early age impacted your walk and your journey in your life?
Well, I was always curious about, why I was given up for adoption, and then, how I, ended up in Montana, because, Osaka at that time was it was like the 7th or 8th largest city in the world at that time.
Okay.
It's quite a few years ago, but at that time it was like the 7th or 8th, so it was like a huge metropolis. And then to move, to eastern Montana, which is a very, sparsely populated, more cattle than people, it's kind of place.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that was a shock to me to try to, and I'm really a city person. I mean, even though I grew up in Montana and spent all my formative years there, I really like being in a city. I like the excitement and hustle and bustle of being in a city. So I don't know if that was because I was born in a city or that was just my nature, but I really feel more comfortable being in a city.
That's interesting because even though you were 2, like you said, it could have been the environment that you came out of, and all of a sudden, I mean, I'm sure it was complete shell shock to you to go from this big city noise, and all of a sudden you're just seeing tumbleweed and hearing cows and dust everywhere. So at 2, I'm sure you was definitely shell shocked,
Right.
for sure. And I'm sure it took you a minute to even process, what had happened.
So from what you can remember, how was that conversation presented to you by your aunt and uncle?
It was my aunt, who was actually the sister of my birth father, so they were brother and sister.
Okay.
And she just told me the stories. She said, first of all, she told me about their upbringing. They had a very hard life as children growing up in post-war Japan, and then their father married their mother died, and their father remarried, and the stereotypical evil stepmother. She was not very kind to them at all. In fact, she really didn't care for them at all. And so they had a very hard upbringing. And so she just told me her background, and then she said, and then, transitioned into, your father, you actually were born to the son of my brother. And then she told me about why he decided to make the decision to send me to the United States.
Now, was that when you were 2? Or
No, it was
it?
older than that. It was older than that. I mean,
Okay.
but when I could start comprehending things and understand.
Are you able to recall how you processed it and what it meant? Were you angry? Were you trying to understand, like, what is she really saying? Or did it create a whole laundry list of questions for you?
No, I think I was just trying to understand, but the way it was presented to me was that he was so sick, he couldn't work. So essentially my birth mother was a single mother, because she had to try to work to make, because he couldn't bring in any money. So she had to try to bring in money, and then also trying to, have this little baby with her. So, I just felt for them that it must have been very difficult. I mean, it must have been a very difficult decision for them to make, to give up their child. And so, I tried to empathize with them of how difficult it was. And then, it was compounded by the fact that my birth father had such a hard life growing up. He was afraid that, if something should happen to him, and then my mother remarried, that she remarries this evil guy, and then, the cycle repeats itself, where I'm going through the same thing that he had. He didn't want me to have to go through the same thing that he went through, basically.
So going back now, the story. How did, if any, that impact you while you were in grade school? Did it make you feel like you were, I don't even want to put words into it, because it may have had an impact, and it may have just been, this is who I am, I'm gonna keep it moving. Did it impact you at all, while you were in grade school?
I think the more difficult impact was, here I am, a little Japanese boy in eastern Montana. I mean, there were no other Japanese families in that town. There was one other Asian family, they were Filipino. But, so I always felt like I stood out no matter where I was.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like the other. And so, that was, I think, the more difficult aspect of it.
Did you ever feel like you was a part as you was growing up at any point as you got older?
I'm sorry, did I feel what?
Did you feel a part of that environment at any point whatsoever, or you always felt as an outsider?
You know, the lucky part was that my classmates were very friendly. I mean, it was a very warm and inviting. You know, we're very close, and we're still close to this day. That we still keep in touch, and you know, but I still felt, you know, I mean, there was times that I was, you know, made fun of, and you know, comments were made, and I mean, you know how kids can be, even when they don't try to be cruel, it hurts, you know, to be called things. So that part of it, I always, you know, was on edge. And then, you know, when I would travel out of Glendive, so I would go to some other place in Eastern Montana, then I really felt, you know, again, because I knew no one there, I felt, you know, again, like I was an outsider. And a story that I told Lauren, and I've told some other people, one of the most amazing feelings I had was when the first time I was in Japan. Of course, I went to Tokyo as soon as I could. I got on a train, and I looked around, and everyone looked like me, and I felt like I did not stand out at all. I just felt like there's no one looking at me. No one cares what I look like because I look like everyone else.
Right.
So I felt like I was totally blended into the crowd, and that was like the first time I really felt like, wow, this is what it's like to be, you know, you don't feel like you're, even if not people aren't looking at you, you feel like people are looking at you.
Right.
This time I felt like no one was looking at me, like no one cared who I was.
That sense of community, that's awesome.
Right.
So let me ask you this question. Today, how do you think the adoption and the transition over here, how did that impact your outlook on life? Was it something that subconsciously lay dormant, or was it did it have more of an impact of, I need to know, you know, more about where I come from, and I automatically don't see people that look like me, so it's more challenging. So now it's this uneasy, and I don't want to put words, but I'm curious to know how. And again, you having, and they say hindsight is 20/20, being able to just sit back and reflect. How do you think, and it may have been different impacts at different seasons, how did it impact you as you grew up?
Yeah, I think probably the first real big impact was when I was in college. I graduated from high school and I went to the University of Montana, and I just sort of felt lost. I was drifting around. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, but then I was studying political science, but I realized I don't know if that's really what I want to do. And so I felt so lost, and I felt sort of this real strong desire. I really would like to go back to Japan and connect with my birth mother. And I still had other family there as well. And also just what is it like to be in Japan? You know, I wanted to feel that feeling again. So I dropped out of school and I joined the Navy with one of the primary reasons I joined the Navy, because I wanted to see if I could get to Japan. I wanted to be stationed in Japan. And luckily, after I went to boot camp and I went to school, I you know, put down my duty preferences as Japan. And of course, you never know, you know, you never are guaranteed anything, but, you know, luckily I got to go to Japan. And so that was, you know, I was really, really grateful for that experience to be able to go back to Japan. And it sort of, I didn't feel as lost as I felt when I was in school. I felt a little more grounded. And so that was really, I guess, eye-opening, where I thought, I didn't realize that I had such a desire to go to Japan until, you know, I was there, and I realized, okay, this is, you know, this has been driving me, subconsciously, this has been driving me for a while.
So it's interesting to me that you were adopted by your father's sister, right? So
Yes.
At any time, did they ever speak about, well, you know, let's take you back to Japan and meet other family members, since you're within the family?
Right.
I'm just trying to understand and wrap my head around how come it took you until you joined the Navy to get to Japan.
Yeah, I think that was a matter of finances. My parents were not wealthy, and so it was just a matter of not being able to. Now, it's interesting, my adopted grandmother actually did go back to Japan, she was actually born in Japan, and she went back to Japan when I was probably a young child. And so she actually met my family, my birth family, because she knew who they were and where they lived. And so she contacted them, and she was actually able to meet them. And she came back and talked a little bit about them. And when I went to Japan, returned to Japan for the first time, they were very excited about, oh yeah, your grandmother came here. She was great. We talked to her. We had a good conversation with her. And she's a wonderful person. So that was interesting.
Okay.
So if you remember, talk to me about you're back in Japan, you're about to meet your family, your biological, for the first time.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that emotion as you're driving up. You already are reinforced because, like you said, I look like everybody else. Nobody's paying attention to me. I just feel this sense of community, and you get the cherry on top of the cake that now you're going to meet. So talk to me a little bit about how you felt or how you remember feeling on that occasion.
Yeah, I mean, it was, all kinds of mixed emotions. I was excited, I was nervous, and I was sad as well. And so, we met at a hotel in Tokyo, and we both cried, and, it was a very emotional reunion. And, and it's I don't remember her, but I think I felt a kinship with her right away. So that was, it was a very comforting feeling that, okay, there's a connection here, even though we've been separated all this time. I still feel a connection with her. So that was very nice. And then we got to spend some time together. And then, I had no idea of what other relatives that I had. So when my adopted mother left Japan and moved to the United States, she married a U.S. serviceman who was also, he was Nisei, which means that he was, his parents were born in Japan, but he was born in the United States.
Okay.
And so he was in the Korean War, serving in the U.S. Army. And that's when he met my adopted mother, my aunt, and then they got married. And so they moved to the United States before my birth father and birth mother ever met. So they had never met her at all. So they had no idea anything about her, really knew very little about her background. And so when I got there, I found out I had a grandmother, and I had aunts and uncles and cousins, and they all remembered me because they were all older than me. All my cousins were older than me. So they remembered me as a baby, but again, I had no memory of them. But it was all very welcoming. My grandmother, she cried. She thought she was never going to see me again. And so she was very emotional. And so it was a very, very, touching and emotional reunion.
I can relate to that grandmother part for sure. So what about your, once you found out about what took place with your father, talk to us about how you had to, deal with those emotions, if any.
Well, first of all, that was a secret. So when we were informed that he had passed away, we just assumed that he had died from complications from his tuberculosis or some health reason. And it wasn't until my wife Lauren went to interview my birth mother that she finally admitted that he actually had committed suicide. She had never she was told when that happened, her uncle told her, don't tell anyone what happened, just say that he passed away. And so we were shocked. I was shocked. His sister, she didn't know, my adopted mother, she didn't know either. She thought he had just died of natural causes. So she was shocked to find out that he had committed suicide. And that was another, double-edged, because of course, then she felt guilty. Because she told him when he said, I want to send you my son, I want you to be adopted, because she couldn't have children. And he knew that she wasn't able to have children. So he said, I want you to take care of my son. And she said, you better be sure, because if you send him here, I'm not going to send him back. So you better be absolutely 100% sure that this is what you want. Oh, wow. And he said, yes, this is what I want. And so then when she found out later that he, committed suicide because he was in such grief, she felt guilty, because she said, oh, if I hadn't taken him, he wouldn't have committed suicide. So then she felt this burden of guilt on her, because that she did accept me to come live with her, or to adopt me. And if she hadn't done that, maybe he would have lived, he wouldn't have committed suicide.
Did you take on any ownership with you being the child that was put up for adoption, and that was the choice? that he did choose to send you to his sister, and then him making that choice. How did you feel about that?
I was obviously I was very sad because I met a lot of people who knew him when I went back to Japan, and they all said he was a wonderful guy. He was very talented. He could play the piano. He was very well liked, very popular person, and I just felt so sad that this decision that he made, he felt so terrible about it that he thought the only solution was to end his life. It seemed like such a terrible waste, yeah.
So to pivot a little bit, how did you and Lauren meet?
We actually worked together. So she was working at the Anti-Defamation League, and I came on, and she was actually my boss. So we worked together for about a year, and of course she had no idea that I was interested in her. And I, of course, because we were in a working environment, I was, she's my boss. I'm not going to do. But then when I was leaving, I asked her if she wanted to go to dinner. It's sort of a goodbye, but it was a more of a romantic on my part. And then that's when she found out that I was interested in her.
So it wasn't a goodbye; it was a hello. That is awesome. So let me ask this question: how soon into you all's courting did you share with her, listen, this is my family dynamic, this is my background?
I don't think it was that long. It wasn't right away, but I think eventually, as we were just talking about, as you naturally do, talk about where you came from and your family history. I brought up that, I have a little bit of an unusual story, and I told her the story. I've never tried to hide it. I've never tried to, I've never been ashamed of or anything, of what my story is, my background. If anyone wants to know, or, people get to know me, I'll tell them the story of how I came to the United States.
Okay. So Lauren, when did you feel, or both of you, did you have a discussion to say, you know what, I think we need to write a book about your story? When did that take place, or how did that come about?
I'm not sure what year it was, 2009, 2010. Anyway, it was a 6-year journey. Mm-hmm. At first, I was going to write it as a memoir, making everything true to the best of my ability. But I soon realized that there was so much that I would never know, because quite a few of the people, most importantly, his father, was deceased. Mm-hmm. So it was very frustrating to me, and I kind of couldn't figure out how I was going to do this. And fortunately, Dana said to me, why don't you write it as a novel? Well, that just opened the floodgates, because then I could imagine what it was like, the dynamics between his birth mother and birth father. So I created some people, that I thought were critical to the story itself. Mm-hmm. I imagined his wicked stepmother, who I had so much fun writing. I know it sounds terrible.
You have creative license. It's okay.
Sometimes the most interesting people are the meanest, So, and I had a chance to really let it rip. And of course, in doing this, I asked Dana for permission, because I never would have, embarked on this journey had I not felt that this was okay with him.
Right.
Because I was really, treading on some very sensitive material. And I'll tell you that, when I found out that his father had killed himself, his mother showed me his suicide note, mm-hmm. which she had never shared with anyone. And the crying among the three of us, his birth mother, his adoptive mother, and me, it was like a knife to my heart. And I didn't know how I was going to handle this. When I came back, here I was with all this information, and I'm just sitting on it. And I really wasn't sure how to handle it. And at one point, his adoptive mother said, now you're going to tell Dana what happened. I said, Mitzi, I'm not. I said, that's your job. I said, you're the sister of this man. You're the adoptive mother of my husband. It has to come from you. Well, at first she was quite squeamish, and then she realized that it was her role to tell him that this would have been wrong to hide this fact and have him, go through his life thinking one story when it was a completely different one. And I was quite worried, how he was going to handle this. And they did it in person. Dana had to go on business and ended up going to see Harry and Mitzi. And it was then that I had kind of coached her, this is how maybe you can do this. And I'd spoken to a therapist too, because I was so distraught. Should I tell him? Shouldn't I tell him? And every professional said, you have to tell him. This is his story. You've been able to unearth this, which of course I had no idea it was all going to come out. And, I would leave it to Dana to tell you how he processed that information. But as a writer, as a novelist, forgive me for saying this, it just made for a more compassionate, compelling story. And we as writers are always looking for the juice. We're always looking for the drama, especially if it's real, which this certainly was. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So my question for you is this, and again, this is your perception. Once he was given that information, what was your perception? Did you see a change in him? Or was it okay?
Not really. Not really. I mean, Dana's very factual in his walk through life. And I think, and I would like him to speak to this, but I think he just said, okay, this is what really happened. I'm luckier to be in the United States now that, my father was in such dire straits. I don't know, honey, what would you say when you all of this was revealed to you?
Well, I mean, the story was sad all along. So, I mean, this just made it a little sadder, but I don't think it really changed anything other than the fact that, it made me think about what might have happened. For example, this is a term that I just learned recently, is kinship adoption, which basically means that somebody from the family, and this happens all the time, and sometimes it's not even adoption, just, a grandmother helps raise a child because the mother can't do it or whatever. Very, very common event. But I think about what would happen had my adopted parents were living in Japan. It might not have even been an adoption. It might have just been, hey, we're struggling here. Can you take care of Dana for a little while until we can get back on our feet and get everything back together again, and then we can take him back into our house. And in which case, it wouldn't have been such a split. They would just let him. I would just lived with him for a while, and then I would have came back, and then he wouldn't have felt such tragedy about this feeling of giving me away or this sense of loss of what happened. It would have just been, okay, we'll do whatever we have to take care of Dana, and then he'll come back to, when you're ready to, he'll come back to you. But because of the fact they were living in the United States, and also the United States government wouldn't allow me to come to the United States without being adopted. So there was kind of quotas on Japanese coming to the United States at that time. And so they had to have a compelling reason for me to come. And also it was also unusual that both parents were still alive, to be able to adopt a child when both parents were still alive. So it actually took a bill in Congress. The local Congress, they had to contact our local congressman. He had to write a bill. It was actually signed by President Kennedy to be able to allow me to come to the United States to be adopted. So, there's a whole, formal process that went through that, had they been living in Japan, that, none of that would have happened. It would have just been, I would have been living down the street, for a while until they were ready to bring me back or whatever.
So 2 questions. One, the fact that there's a bill that your life is responsible for is amazing. And I'm curious to know how many others have used that bill for, to have their journey. I'll be curious to know that.
I don't know, but it's considered what's called a private bill. So I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. It was, specifically for me. So I don't know if other people can.
Okay. I got you.
But
Understood.
you did set a precedent.
Right. I mean, that's awesome.
For sure.
Number 2, and we've had guests on the show that are on both sides of this equation. Some that because they have been adopted, it's on their heart to adopt. And then we have some that say that, you know what, I'm not going to have kids. I don't want to adopt. With you having the information, knowing that you were adopted and knowing your story, was your perception or was your desire to adopt, or was it to not have kids, or what was your thought process with regards to a generation behind you?
Yeah. I don't know where this comes from, but for as long as I can remember, I've never actually wanted to have children, and I don't know what the impetus of that is, but I've never had a strong desire to have children. Now I do, though, however, support adoption. I have friends who have adopted, and they've asked me about that, and I've always said, it's a great thing to do if you can adopt a child. It'll be fulfilling for you, and it'll be fulfilling for the child. I think I've always encouraged people, and I'm thrilled to see people who are willing to adopt children. But I've never had any desire to have any children, and maybe it's because of my background. I don't know why I have that feeling, but I've never had any strong desire to have children.
It's interesting. We've had, like I said, some guests that have the same mindset as you to say, I don't want any kids for myself. But then we have some that say, I want to adopt. I want to be to somebody else, what the blessing that I got. When my wife and I got together, she was under the perception that she couldn't have kids. So I automatically said, well, we can adopt. I'd have no problem with that. I go back also to, and I just remembered this when you were talking about, it wasn't too early on that you shared with Lauren that you were adopted. And I remember the first conversation that my wife and I had on the phone. Within the first probably hour, I just spilled the beans of, hey, this is who I am, and this is, my story. And it was overwhelming to her, but it was puzzling. So it's always interesting to hear how people take ownership of their adoption stories and then what they do with them. So I'm very intrigued, like I said, to just hear, one, you said you didn't have a desire to have kids, but you support those who want to adopt. So we definitely celebrate that, because we're a community and everybody just falls on a different spot in the big puzzle of, adoption. So let me ask this question. Looking back, and you may say it's no right or wrong answer, this is your perception. How do you think you being adopted, if any, impacted your outlook on marriage?
I don't think it impacted my outlook at all. I mean, I got married later in life, but that's not because, not for lack of trying. I wanted to get married, but it just took a while. But so I had no qualms about marriage at all.
Okay. And again, I ask that because you never know how someone may take that core piece of the adoption and how it impacts the outlook. One of the things that we identified with our spouses is that some of the things that we do and some of the realities of how we act stem from us being adopted. For me, early on, I always had this mindset, well, if my birth mother put me up for adoption, how long before you walk away from me? And that was my insecurity that I had to wrestle with. But I didn't know it was that until I was able to really be mature with myself.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a
big aha moment for you.
It was a golden moment in my relationship with my wife, for me to be able to articulate to her, this is what I'm feeling. And she understood it. So now she was able to understand that it wasn't a personal attack on her. It was me dealing with my trauma. And it
May I ask you if you had counseling to help you get to that place, or were you just very insightful?
So I didn't have counseling for that aspect. I had counseling when my adopted mom passed away because I was a mess. And I think what happened, because I'm in the mental health field, once I got the blueprint from my counseling, it was like the stars started connecting, and I just started unlocking padlocks in my own bedroom, so to speak.
Wow.
And that one, and I was almost scared to say that because I felt like I was wrong or I was inadequate or something, something was wrong with me because I felt this way. But then I had to say, no, this is part of my story and who I am. And this is why I feel this way. And if I share with you, this is how I feel this way, are you going to embrace me and help me go through it? Or will you judge me? And it was the first part. I was embraced, and we were able to have some very dynamic conversations. And it just unlocked so much because I was hearing things that weren't necessarily there. She would say one thing, but my perception, my trauma would write over what she was saying, and I would perceive something else. That's why I always ask, and everybody's different in their journey. Some people, like you said, don't have that insight yet to really start pulling back those onion layers, because when you start doing that, you're looking in the mirror and you're going deep down in the roots. And when you start dealing with the roots, it gets dirty sometimes.
Yeah. Is your wife also in the mental health field, or?
My wife was a psychology major.
Oh boy.
So I was a great puzzle for her. So once I unlocked that, it was like, oh yes, we're here. I'm 10 toes in. But yeah, she was a big psychology person, Skinner, Freud. So we would have some dynamics. I often say we are the CSI.
The CSI of adoption.
Yeah, because it's the discussions are just amazing sometimes, and it's just our common language. But you start looking at, well, this impacts this, and this is a reality from that, and how does this now drive your thought process? So I'm big on just what's really under the hood, so to speak.
So I was going to say that I kind of identified with that because for a long period of time, I was sort of under the belief that there's no woman could love me. And even though my adopted mother, she was very loving. I mean, she was, very, very loving, but I sort of somewhere in my mind thought, no woman is ever going to love me. And it took me a long time to overcome that hurdle of thinking, okay, I can be loved. Somebody may actually love me. And so that part I identify with.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a nice little therapy moment right there.
It's therapeutic. So take us to the wedding, the first time that you met his mom, because you said, that was a moment. Yeah. So paint the picture. Here it is. You're getting, the man of your dreams. You're getting, that opportunity. And now you're getting another piece of the puzzle.
I was very apprehensive. I didn't know how Miyoko would view me or accept me. This was my second marriage.
Okay.
And had I had my druthers, I would have bought myself an Armani red dress with spangles. But I thought, oh God, it's going to be such a shock that I need to wear, a very traditional formal dress. It's kind of a wedding cake dress, which I absolutely hated. But I thought that'll make it easier for her to accept me. So she arrived, and she was lovely and gracious. The day of the wedding, she wore a kimono. People were, I think, very excited really, to meet her, even though she spoke no English. You know, there was a lot of back and forthing and hugging and this sort of thing. And my mother and Miyoko, it was really sweet, you know, the way they bonded, honestly. And then Miyoko came back a second time when Harry and Mitzi had their 50th wedding anniversary. We sent her a ticket and she stayed with us, and that was lovely. And what do you want to do? It's Miyoko, I want to go to Universal. I want to go to Rodeo Drive and see Pretty Woman.
Okay.
So, you know, so we did all of that. And, you know, again, it's the way America sells itself through the movies.
Right.
So she, you know, she was very excited to see that. And I, at one point, said to Dana, why don't we find her a husband, you know, and bring her to the United States? Because I really, you know, I worry about her. She's getting older.
Right.
Right.
Her church is, you know, extremely important to her. She works for the church and helps people there. She's a very giving, loving person with a great personality. She loves to laugh, you know, with all of the sadness and the sorrow of her life. It's amazing that she has such a jolly, I'll call it jolly personality. But Dana said, no, she wouldn't come to the United States. She can't drive, la, la, la.
Right.
You know, but I was going to put an advertisement, a personal ad, you know, in the Japanese newspaper here in LA, because we have a big Japanese community.
Okay.
And I figured eventually we would find someone who would be a good match. But Dana said no. So that was kind of it. But it was, you know, meeting her, seeing her, spending time with her. As I say, she was very gracious, very loving towards me, very appreciative that I had married Dana. She told me, you know, on our first meeting or trip or whatever it was, she thought Dana would never get married. So she was very relieved
Wow.
that he had found someone, you know, who was kind of a caregiver, which I sort of am.
Right.
Yeah, so it turned out beautifully. And when we were together in Japan, Dana didn't go. It was just the three women.
Okay.
It was so much fun because the family was so receptive to us. When Mitzi and I got off the plane in Osaka and went to the hotel, and I had made all the arrangements, you know, because it's been 50 years since she was there. The whole family arrived with these two absolutely enormous bouquets of orchids for us. I said to Mitzi, they look like a toilet bowl. They're so big. You know, we could barely carry them. And that was like a very symbolic thing.
Right.
They were so gracious and so welcoming. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Now, Dana, do you speak Japanese?
Yeah, unfortunately, I do not. I speak a little bit, but yeah, one of the things that my adopted parents wanted to do was to make sure that I spoke English with no accent. So you know, I did not speak any more Japanese, you know, once I was settled in Montana. And I regret that. That's one of my biggest regrets. Is I wish I would have kept up the Japanese. And obviously, I could still learn it now. And I've learned a little bit, but you know, I'm not fluent. I wish I was fluent.
Now, what is your adoptive mother still fluent in it, or no?
She was. Unfortunately, she has passed. She passed about 13 years ago, I guess. So it's been a while since she passed. But yeah, she could get on the phone and speak to, you know, Miyoko, my birth mother, with no problem on the phone.
Well, you know what? Lauren did say that she was with her when they went to Japan. Don't mind me.
That's okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah, she needed her to be able.
Yes, don't mind me.
No, don't worry.
But it's interesting that, you know, with her being fluent in it, that she wanted. But I can understand with you being here, wanted you to be able to, like you said, speak without an accent. but like you said, that whole being able to speak fluently, that's a gift.
Yeah.
To be able to do that.
I mean, again, it's that notion of, creating Dana into the all-American boy.
Mm-hmm.
The dress, the language, on their way from San Francisco to Montana, Dana's adoptive father was naming all the cars, and by the time they got to Montana, Dana could point out, that's a Chevrolet, that's a this is the that, and within 6 months, he was speaking perfect English from that point on.
So let me ask this question, Dana, with her saying that, because we've talked mainly about your adopted mom, your aunt, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was your relationship with her husband? How was that?
It was good. I mean, we weren't really close, but, he was a good father, and we had a good relationship. I mean, I think, again, he was from a small town. He grew up in a small town in Colorado. And so, I had a more worldly view than he did. His view was very, simple and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just the way his view was. That's the way he was raised. And, I was excited about cities and, culture and all these kind of things. And so we really didn't see eye to eye in that sense.
Got it.
So he was truly integrated into the American way. So you had no traditions of Japanese lifestyle whatsoever growing up at all, in which you could have, but they chose to completely eliminate it altogether.
Yeah, pretty much. The only thing that we really had was food. We had Japanese food, but other than that, really had, and he really didn't have any Japanese culture, growing up. He was, grew up in Colorado, and all he really didn't know Japan, other than what he learned from his parents. But
Right.
it wasn't like he was Japanese. He was more American than he was Japanese.
So they chose that same path for him as well.
Yeah.
Well, if I can jump in, Harry's mother never spoke a word of English.
Mm.
Living in Colorado, but she had how many children, honey?
7 children.
7 children. They were a farming family, and that's very common, to try to have as many kids as you can to work the farm.
Right.
And she relied on all of these kids to speak for her and to negotiate and all of that. So until she died, she barely spoke a word of English. And that can be very isolating, don't you think?
I would think so. And I'm just listening to the different cultures, because in our culture, we want to keep as many traditions as we possibly can from the American way, if we can possibly do that, because we're more about the generation to the next generation and the next generation.
Yeah.
And for your family, Dana, and your uncles, well, your father's family, all wanted to remove all of that tradition. And mind you, your Japanese tradition goes way, way, way back.
Yeah. Yeah.
They wanted to just not even have it to where they were really integrated into the American dream, I guess you could say.
Exactly.
That's very interesting.
It's sad, though, because
it is. Sad.
There people who come from Japan are missing out and not knowing the culture. And I'd say that for anyone coming from a foreign country, to me, I think it's a disservice to a child to cut off all appreciation for where they're from, where they came from. What is it? The roots and the leaves, you've got to have the roots going way down and the leaves and the branches to fly, as it were. And I'm a big believer in that.
But the other side, and I agree with you, I don't want you to think that I don't agree, because I do. It may be a protection
and I was just going to say, yes.
Where, because like you said, they have this grandiose concept of America.
Right.
And we are able to have you fully integrated, maybe you won't deal with some of the challenges that others have had to deal with once they come over here. Like Dana said, you know, we want you to speak without an accent because we want you to have a better opportunity. We don't want you to be judged like we were. So, and again, people operate based on their experiences, whether it's limited or whether it's grand. So I can see it being a hard thing of, in their mind, it's a protection piece. But we understand that traditions being passed down is that's a priceless gift. And a lot of things are lost in, you know, when you don't have that.
And, you know, we do better when we know better, right?
Right.
So back then they like John said, it was based on their experiences, their environment, and they wanted to separate themselves from that. And their decision was to better give the kids a better opportunity, not knowing in the long run, it really wasn't a better opportunity as far as the culture is concerned.
I will also tell you that one of my aunts was actually interned in a camp during World War II. So, you know, they also had that sort of scar experience with them as well, as being, you know, singled out and put in a camp.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I can understand that. And that's unfortunate. So with your book, Lauren, this book right here.
Thank you for the copies as well.
Yes, we got our copies.
Yes.
What is it that you want your readers to get from this book?
I have to think hard about that. I think even the title sort of gives you a peek into what is, which is all sorrows can be borne. And the rest of that sentence is, if you can write the story. There's something that gives a person agency if they're able to write down what happened rather than hiding it, because secrets can kill you.
That's the truth.
And so I guess that would be the takeaway. The other takeaway is don't judge other people. Don't judge what they did. You can't walk in someone else's shoes. You can't know what Dana's father felt and the desperation that he felt, and the fact that he thought this is the best choice. This is, you know, this will give my son a good life. And he always used to say to Dana's mother, we'll have more children, you know, we'll have more children, but this little boy needs to have a good home right now.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, even with his father, with Dana, with your father committing suicide, in a way, the reason why he committed suicide was because of him giving you up. Oh, and a question, it just hit me. Did you ever read the letter that your father wrote, his suicide note?
I have not read it.
It's in the book, honey.
Oh, it is?
It's a terrible thing when you have a wife who's written 40 books, you know, then it's like after a while he just gives up.
But Lauren, you said something earlier, a few things. I mean, everything that you said was powerful. You said, hey, don't judge other people. One of the things that we have had lots of discussions about is how us as adoptees perceive those who gave us up. And because of the secrets, in most cases, what I find is that if you just tell what happened, then you're able to say, once the emotions settle and the dust settles, then you say, okay, now this is my story. I own it and I can move forward. But as long as there's this unknown, we fill in the gap with multiple things that are often wrong. And it often leads to unnecessary anger, or I'm not even saying unnecessary, I would say extended, because it doesn't have to be extended. But if you are constantly writing it, then using your dry erase marker and then erasing it, then writing something else, it's this ebbs and flows that you keep going down because you want to fill in the gap with something. And then if you never get it, then it's like, well, I'm gonna create my own narrative subconsciously that I can feel comfortable and continue to walk with. So you really struck a heartstring with me in that, because that is so true. And I'll be honest, the title, All Sorrows Can Be Born, it's powerful. It's powerful. So I looked at the title when I got the book like, ooh. and just thinking about my adoption journey.
Yes.
So it's amazing.
Thank you.
It is. And how much of this book is fiction and nonfiction?
I would say about maybe it's 50-50, 60-40, leaning a little bit more toward fiction. Because again, as I said earlier, there were so many things I couldn't know.
Right.
I mean, I'm a good researcher, so if there was any way that I could have figured it out, I would have.
Right.
So I have another question. And again, thank you all for investing time to come on our platform with your resume of all the things that you've done. We just want to say thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
And here's the question. So Dana, when she brought this idea to you that, hey, I've written all these books, but I want to write this story. Take us back to that moment, if you remember, or how you remember it.
Yeah, well, I was flattered because I always thought this was an interesting story, and I thought, it should be told, and then to have somebody who's talented as Lauren to write it, I thought, this is the perfect person to write this story. So I was very excited about it.
That's a great answer. I love the way you kind of gave yourself some kudos so she could smile. That's awesome. I mean, that, like you said, when you have somebody in your own backyard that can illustrate your story in such a powerful way, I mean, it's just a work of art. It's beautiful. That is beautiful.
Thank you.
So as we get ready, because again, just thank you both for your transparency and your willingness, and thank you, Lauren, for reaching out to us.
Yes.
My question, as we get ready to land the plane, is this. First question is for you, Lauren. One, as a spouse to someone who has a very colorful story with their adoption, what words of encouragement or what type of insight would you give to a spouse that has a significant other that is adopted, that they're wrestling with whatever it may be, because you went and you unpacked a lot of the story and ultimately found out some things that would be very heavy. So people may have that fear of, well, I don't want to get involved, or I don't want to do this because of how it may. What words, I'm not even going to say of encouragement, what would you say to them? I'll just put it like that.
Well, I think you said it when you were describing your relationship with your wife and how you were able to share with her and how you kind of overcame whatever fear you might have had in telling her what really happened. So I would say to anyone who is married to someone who's been adopted, it's the greatest gift if you can sit down and listen. I mean, I have a rabbi friend who said, in talking about someone who is going to die, and I said, well, what do? He said, you just sit and you listen. You don't jump in, you don't try to change their words. You just sit there and you look into their eyes and you take it in. So that's my advice.
Awesome. So going to the other side, Dana, with you having the story that you have and the journey that you've had, what would you say to somebody who doesn't know their history? They don't know, they feel, as you stated, that they're not part of a community and they just have so many questions. What would you say to them that they are adopted and they're just at that unknown part?
I would say, first of all, embrace the family that's adopted you. They wanted you, so they've taken you in, and celebrate the fact that they willingly reach out to you and want to love you. And then, do what you can and be straightforward with them and say, it's no disrespect to you, but I'm interested in learning a little bit about my history. And so I'm going to go and do some research and try to find out what I can about my background and my culture and all that kind of stuff. And hopefully they'll be very supportive and willing and see the reason that you're curious about these things and support you in that endeavor.
Awesome.
Great. Where can we get this book at, Lauren?
You can get it on Amazon. You can order it through your local bookstore, whatever. You can call me.
Okay. So again, our listeners and viewers, it's called All Sorrows Can Be Born. And it's a great read. Just the first sentence it starts off strong. It starts off real strong. So I suggest everybody go out and get this book and read it, and be able to kind of understand maybe your own journey. Again, we want to thank you so very much. But before we leave, we do kind of end our show with the same, what do you call that? Closing. So Dana, sorry, Lauren, you can't participate. John will call his name, I will call my name, and you will call your name, and then all three of us will say, we are adopted. Okay?
Okay.
Got it?
Yeah, got it.
All right.
So before we do that again, Lauren, thank you for reaching out.
Thank you for
Yeah,
giving
thank
us
you.
this platform. It's just always a pleasure, and I really appreciate the wonderful questions and your format. Everything was great.
And makes it so much better when you have very loving and hosts that really care about this subject.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
That
Thank you.
means the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much. Yes.
So with that being stated, we have gone through an amazing journey, and I am better for it. I'll be honest. It was a therapeutic moment. We got an opportunity to meet some awesome guests.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this. I'm John.
I'm Lisa.
I'm Dana.
And we are
adopted. Yes.
Thank y'all so
Thank
much.
you.
Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. You can find us on all platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you find your podcast. Please, ma'am, sir, reach out if you have any questions with regards to the book. Her information will be listed below. If you have any questions for us, if you want to be a guest, send us an email. We respond to emails, as you see.
Yes.
We are very, very open book. And we are here to help this community and to just have this conversation and be transparent.
Yes. And also share your comments. And again, please hit the link because we like to get our impressions up. So thank you again for our guest. And until next time.
Have a great one.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the So I'm Adopted podcast. We hope that this was informative and educational. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at So I'm Adopted. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel, So I'm Adopted. And again, thank you for listening. And until next time, make the choice to begin your healing journey.